you're designing anything that would be deemed as complex and you're not using some sort of requirements management tool, you could very easily find yourself in some hot water. In this episode of DevTalk with Rich and Vin, the duo discuss when and where these tools should be implemented, with an assist from a special guest. Good afternoon. Welcome to DevTalk with Rich and Vin. I am Rich and he is Vin. How you doing, Vin?
Great, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. We had yet another heat advisory. My Echo device pretty much every morning says there's a heat advisory in effect from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And that's been going on every day for at least a month, it seems like.
Did you need your Echo to do that, or could you just walk outside?
I need my Echo to do that.
Okay,
of course
fair
I
enough.
do. Of course I do.
I sat down last night. We added a porch fan and light in the backyard, and I sat down with all of my routines that I say, like I'm going to bed or I'm doing this, and adding the fan and the light to it to make sure that everything is off when I go to bed. So
see, yeah, but the problem with those routines is you have to remember what you name the routine, and if you don't use it regularly, you forget.
Talk to Gail, because that's literally the problem we have. I name them and she can't remember what I named them.
You know, a little side story. I just got one of those virtual frames, you know, so you load all your pictures into it. And we had one before. And so just by coincidence, I happened to get the same app to use for on the new frame that used on the old frame. And I noticed, and I haven't changed the pictures on the old frame in a very long time. When I went to the app, I noticed I had named the old frame Susie. I have absolutely no idea why I would have named the frame Susie, but I did. And now I know that the frame is named Susie, so now I can change the pictures. Anyway,
What did you name the new one?
I named it Frame in Kitchen.
Okay.
Makes sense? Makes sense.
Captain
Okay.
Liberal.
So this subject of the day is, what's the right way to frame this? Doing your design such that you're doing everything the right way, in the right order, so you're not forgetting stuff. You're not worried about whether your supply chain is up to date and all that stuff. Making sure that all your components are in the right place and all that stuff. And if only we had a way, an automated way to do this, because as you and I both know, older designs, it's like, oh my God, we forgot to leave enough space for the battery. Oh my God, we forgot to leave enough space for this. Oh my God, you know that the price of this material just tripled. What do we do? This component's not available anymore. Do we need to do a redesign? So you've been involved in a lot of these. Is it a complete redesign? Is it thrown out the door?
You know, in a word or two words, I think you are trying to manage the design journey and trying to manage the life cycle of a product, right? And there are manual ways to do that. There's ways to.
Those are just buzzwords, and those are like, yeah, it'd be great if we had.
No, they're not. I mean, they are and they aren't. It's like, you know, if you set it in your car and you don't know where you're going or which way to get there, you're going to be wandering aimlessly. And you know, you might have some idea, but if you're trying to get there efficiently because you need to be at a party at a certain time, you want the fastest way or the way that you know has the least chance of resistance. I mean, that's how Waze got popular and all of that. So, I mean, I think there are tools that will help. You don't have to necessarily make them overly sophisticated. My mom was a bookkeeper, and until she died, she worked for a small store, and they kept all their books on manila cards that were in a bin. They had no computer, they had no nothing. And she was able to do it because the volume was low and she had done it her whole career and she knew what to do. But none of us would consider starting a business and not putting in some kind of accounting package where we could put entries in one place and have it go to both manila cards, or have it checked to make sure.
Circle this back to our embedded developer.
Yeah, so the same thing is true of designing product or living with the life cycle of a product when you're a business, right? You can certainly do it the old way, and there's a cost associated with that. or there are tools that help you do it. And depending on the level and the size, it could be as simple as something on a shared drive that you built yourself, or it could be a real tool, whether it's local or cloud-based, to do that.
What about something that's a much more complex design where it has multiple stages of design where you're constantly throwing it over the wall and back and trying to do continuous design?
That's when you need the tools that we're talking about.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
We're talking about places to manage requirements documents. We're talking about places to manage the journey as you go through development and testing and input. You try to start with a spec, but you don't get a spec on Friday and have a product on Monday. So as you're developing, market requirements change, the business changes, personnel changes, and you need to manage that through the process so that when you get to the end, you know that you've achieved something that you can sell, right?
It's actually funny because usually you have a product on Monday and a spec on Friday.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Very good. So that said, there is a company out there who I'm aware of who does this, and I think they do it pretty well. But I've asked Neil Stroud to join us from Jama Software because they have a tool that does just this, and I want to know from the horse's mouth whether this stuff. I'll say whether it actually works, and I'm sure Neil will tell us that it does. But I want to know how it works. So Neil, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to be here. I love the lead in. I'd love to hear you guys chatting. That was excellent.
Oh, stick around. Wait till we start insulting each other.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, the software exists. So the first question, why doesn't everybody use the type of software that we're referring to?
It's a great question. I think to a greater or lesser extent, people do. I think, although there are still pockets out there, as you kind of alluded to, where you develop the product first and then you do the requirements afterwards. But the challenge is, of course, how do you know you're solving the right problem? So thankfully, those circumstances are moving away. But I think it really depends where you are on the journey as well, because as you alluded to, life is getting way more complex. And smaller companies with a simple product probably can get away with doing it the old-fashioned way with spreadsheets. You've got a few requirements, as you said, Vin, you're kind of shuffling that backwards and forwards. You've got it stored locally on a drive. The challenge you have is that complexity grows, that becomes unmanageable really quickly. And then you find yourself tripping over requirements and what's the single source of truth. If you've got multiple people working on the requirements, which is the right one you should be developing to, those kinds of things. I always use software-defined vehicle as a kind of an up-to-date example. When you look at what the OEMs are trying to solve and the challenges they're working with, it's a hardware and a software and a system problem. And you've got hundreds of thousands of requirements that are all intermingled, interdependent. How do you get your arms around that? And the only way to do it is to have a full-featured tool like Jama Software provides with Jama Connect to manage that and all the benefits that go with it.
So does everybody on the team have to buy in 100%? If you have one outlier, does that screw up the whole system?
It's better if you can get everybody to buy in, of course, because then you can really, really drive efficiencies across these bigger corporations. Of course, what we do see today is the larger organizations are definitely fragmented. You've got hardware team using one tool, you've got the software team using something else. And that it can work, but it of course creates inefficiencies, and you've got dysfunction and disconnects between the teams, and that just introduces inefficiencies. So if you can get the whole team to buy in, then of course it's better. But we have customers who aren't all the way there yet and are working through that pain right now, and it's an inevitability of organizational growth.
But I've been designing these things my whole life. Why do you think you could tell me how to do it better?
I'm not going to tell you how to do better. I'm going to tell you how to make it more efficient, accelerate your time to market, get more efficiency out of your designs, reduce your total cost of ownership, reduce your risk. Because one of the challenges we do see very frequently is, the worst case scenario is you miss a requirement, you put your product out to market, and that results in a recall, which is really, really costly. it can have brand impact, all kinds of negative connotations. The earlier you can catch that in the development cycle, the better all around. That results in dollars savings immediately off the bat. So that's where JAMA can really help you as well, is spotting those disconnects, as Vin said. Maybe your market changes, maybe your requirements change. The earlier you can do that in the development cycle, the better all around.
But this has to be introduced at the beginning. Otherwise, you're putting your project on hold, right?
Right, exactly. So requirements from the beginning. In an ideal world, it doesn't always happen, but that's the best way to do it. Is know what you're going to design, capture those requirements up front, and of course, it's critical in for safety, for example. We're seeing again in the automotive world with safety, and other verticals, of course, as well, where safety is becoming more and more dominant as a requirement, as well as cybersecurity. You have to, as part of the certification and assessment phase, show that you've caught those requirements, captured those requirements up front, developed to those, tested them, and you've got traceability back to those original requirements. Of course, if you've missed something on the way, that's just going to result in delay to market, additional cost.
When you were sitting in the corner office, Vin,
Yes.
did you tell your team that they need to use a tool like this?
When I was sitting in the corner office, tools were not this sophisticated, but we did have a system that
Well, maybe not the corner office, the middle office at your most previous job.
Yeah,
most recent
absolutely.
job.
We did, we did definitely do that. When I was at that job, we didn't do a lot of development in-house because we were supplying components, but we saw a lot of customers
that shouldn't matter,
using
should it? Whether you do the design in-house. That's even more reason to use it, because to have control.
Well, we were supplying components to people doing designs, and our designs were being done at home office, and they use those tools for the development of chips and things like that. But certainly when I ran the design company, we used more manual tools than what's available now, because the internet was just sort of becoming a thing, in the early 2000s and 2010, in terms of online tools. And in dealing with customers using the chips, they were all using, those who were doing a good job were using some kind of tool like this at one level or another, right? It started out as requirements gathering and requirements management. And if I had to guess, that's kind of where JAMA started as well. Is it JAMA or JAMA? What's the official pronunciation?
I say JAMA. I've heard all kinds of different ones. And of course,
okay,
in Europe and some languages, it's known as YAMA as well, because it's a silent.
Sure.
So yeah, we hear everything.
So
Right,
Vin,
but-
if
yes.
Neil comes into your office to sell you this product, are you buying it?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I did go to the website and look through all of the stuff that they had available to talk about the different features. Because when you mentioned the company to me, I immediately thought about requirements management, right? Like so many of the competitors in this space. And I looked at all of the different things that they have built in, with real-time collaboration and being able to send things out for review, and even managing, tests and stuff. And I want to put my engineering hat on in a minute, Neil, and ask you about some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to put my Six Sigma black belt hat on first, because I see the whole world as F of X, and that I'm always looking for continuous improvement. One of the rarely touted things about tools like this for the company that's spending the money to do it is that you can, if you do this well in a tool like this, you can look back on the process and see where things took longer or cost more, and figure out the places for you to invest as a company to be able to easily continuously improve the development process, the life cycle process, the manufacturing process as you're doing second sourcing or product or component obsolescence, right? And if you, this is a different silo that gets wrapped into this if you do it well. But if you write your code and design your hardware properly, the ability to reuse designs or even spec part of the design when you get into it to say, hey, this filter that I'm designing for this product, or this something, this algorithm, this hardware block, we can use this in other places as we redesign other products for the next generation or product line. So I'm going to go to my boss and say, I want 10% more time to do this right, so we don't have to do it again, but just drop it in place, right? And you can identify those places in the process where you made those decisions and prove that you had the trade-off at the end, and continue to do more of that, right? And there's tons of value in code and hardware reuse, just in terms of testing and field problems and all that. But I want to switch my hat for a minute,
Well,
Neil.
hold on. You didn't answer the question. Neil comes into your office. Are you buying?
Yes, I'm buying 100%.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Buying.
Yep.
Excellent.
I'm buying.
Neil, I get a commission on that.
Okay.
Okay. There you go.
I was just going to dig into that a little bit, because I'm going to go one better for you, Vin. You're
Okay.
right, of course. Constant improvement. Look back, see what you did well, see what you didn't do so well. Actually, you can do it in real time as well with a feature called live traceability. So the way so Jama has this capability where actually we just do requirements management, but we link to all the other tools that are out there. So if I'm a customer and I've got Jira and I've got some other things which are best in breed tools, the way we approach it is say, hey, keep all of those things, because you don't want to disrupt the whole development cycle and throw all those tools out and put in a big kind of PLM that may not be best in class.
Right.
Pick out Jama best in class, use that to look across your whole organization, and you can see in a snapshot how well the organization is performing, what your risks are, how much test coverage you've got, all those kinds of things. So you can actually be smart along the way. You don't have to do a retrospective. You can learn as you go and improve things. And that's useful for all kinds of identification of, road development, or is somebody working on the, a requirement that's an old one that's not there. So you can capture all kinds of things in flight and deal with them.
Yeah, I think, Rich talked about buy-in earlier in the conversation. And I think it's really important to let people know that the data going into this tool is not Big Brother-esque, but more how do we do this really well and not come back to you after you've written an algorithm or designed a circuit and make you change it because something was miscommunicated or misunderstood somewhere along the line, right? I think that's really important, because we all know that better communications makes for better business all through the organization.
You said Big Brother. What about middle brother? I don't want somebody and anybody else looking at my code, aside from my team.
I think that's more of a company culture thing, and you're not going to solve any of that stuff with a tool, right? You're going to company culture follows company management technique, right? You can't come in and change a culture of a company. You change how you manage it, and the culture follows. And so, some of that is really important. If people aren't afraid of losing their job, if people aren't afraid that somebody's going to say, somebody in marketing is going to say, why are you working on that? That's not as valuable as the thing I asked you to work on, but it's somebody else's requirement. Then you, as an engineer, feel like you're playing, politician and middleman and all of that, and they don't want to get caught in any of that. But that's a company culture thing and a company management thing. It's not a tools thing. It's not an engineer's thing. It's not a write the code thing, right? That's, very simple. And, like anything else, you need to be careful when you roll something like this out, that people understand you're rolling it out to help them, not to look over them, not to see what they're doing day by day and criticize them or use it against them in their review or anything like that, right? This is about everyone working as best as they can on a team, right? Races are won by the team, not just the driver. Sports is run, is won by the team, not an individual star, right? Unless it's an individual sport, like, whatever.
You should probably stop your sports analogies right there.
Yeah, my sports analogies are really bad.
All right, so back to Neil. What is the tool that we're alluding to here?
So this is requirements management, I mean, 101 right there. And it's interesting you talk about the culture, because as an engineer myself, right, if we're told to use a tool that we don't like or is a bit clunky or whatever, we never build an affinity with it, and there's natural resistance there. What we've seen, based on the UX that we have, we're cloud-based, it's really, really simple to use, very intuitive. The engineers kind of buy into it because it makes their life easier, and that kind of perpetuates this sense of team, and that looking over my shoulder sense goes away, because it just makes it's less of a burden, less of an overhead, and they can focus on what they love to do best, which is develop, not click in tools.
Yep. I agree.
So have the techniques that we're referring to been around for a long time, or is this something new?
I think the techniques of, you have requirements, you build to those requirements, and then you test is age old. Now we can argue how well we did it. I think that's a debate, and as I said before, it really depends on the product. If it's a simplistic product, then go for it. You can use those older kind of approaches to doing it. We're not in that world anymore. We're in a highly complex world where you just can't manage it effectively and efficiently, and the result of that is errors, because you've got human in the loop at that point trying to do a very complex task, and we're not good at doing those things. It's better to automate.
Very good. Well, I'm going to look into this further, and Vin wants to say one more thing before I cut him off.
I want to swap that hat for the engineering hat, because as you look through the list, one of the things is test management and quality management. And for people who are working on a software only product or a SaaS product, you can build testability into almost any tool to generate test cases and evaluate results. Mm-hmm. But our audience is an embedded systems audience, which means there's typically custom hardware that has real world excitation. And how does the tool allow you to manage that part of the process for embedded systems engineers, product managers, and companies with manufacturing trying to ship?
Great question. So our strategy is a partnership strategy. So there are some great test management tools out there, and we partner with those companies to integrate seamlessly with their tools so we can get the data flow back and forth. So to us, it doesn't really matter whether you're developing hardware or software. We can get an integration to the tool that you're using, and the data flows back and forth. So you can take your test results, test measurement results, feed those back into JAMA, and again, with the live traceability, you know exactly where you are at any moment in time.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to spend a little more time digging into this.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Neil, for joining us and putting up with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
Vin, always good to have these discussions with you.
Same here, Rich.
That was Neil Stroud, Vin D'Agostino, and Rich Nass on DevTalk with Rich and Vin.